Hello everybody and welcome to our third session of SGO Virtual IBC 2020. Many thanks for joining us today. My name is Eva Panyan and I'm Marketing Manager at SGO. Together with me is also Adrian Gonzalez Diaz, Mistika Boutique Product Manager, who will be doing today's presentation. Hi Adrian, how are you?
Hello, I'm really glad to be here in another session, a grading session this time.
Yes, that's correct. So what do you plan to show us today?
Well, today we're going to see how to start with the grading from the scratch. We're going to focus more on the look, more than just managing the grading between shots and the technical aspects. So we are going to focus more in the creative part of the grading using the extensive tool set of Mistika Boutique for that. So that's going to be the main goal for this presentation. We will talk later about how to basically copy and move grades between shots at the end of the presentation, but the core of the presentation will be focused on the creative part of the grading.
That's correct. I suppose that you'll show our attendees how they can actually use the whole extensive professional tool set that Mistika has. And I guess you'll also be showing something very exciting, very new, some news that we'll be showing today for the first time, actually the tools that will be available in the upcoming version. So this is a very exclusive presentation. So just before we dig into the presentation, I would recommend you to make your Zoom window full screen. Like this, you'll see better all the operations that Adrian will be performing. And also at the end of the session, we'll open some time for the Q&A. So if you have some questions during the session, please place them in the Q&A panel you can find in the lower tab of Zoom screen. So, okay, Adrian, I suggest we start. So as we mentioned before, Mistika's color grading toolset has so many different functionalities, and now even more with the latest 10 release. Can you show us where to start, or how would you grade the project from scratch?
Right, so let me show you. We have here a time space with a very nice sport commercial, and this is going to be the project that we want to grade. We're going to focus, as I said at the beginning, in the look of the project. So instead of talking about the technical aspects of the grading, we're going to talk more about the creative aspects. I will use as well maybe not a very conventional approach for that, but just to experiment and to explore new ways of create something, focus again on the creative part. The great thing of Mistika is that you have quite a lot of tools in the color grading toolset, and that flexibility, that freedom, that amount of tools helps you quite a lot to define a look for your shots. I always, when I normally talk about Mistika, I always recommend to try it and to use it especially for new users, etc. Just as for playing with it, just for playing with one shot and see how it responds and how those tools interact between each other, because that's the great thing of Mistika. The fact that you have many tools allows you to explore a huge amount of creative ways to find the look that you want for your project. So for example, in this particular project, which again is a sport commercial for a really well-known brand, the first thing I normally do when I have this kind of projects is just to saturate my colors and add a bit of contrast. And I do this not because, okay, this is the look that I want. No, it's because I need to know exactly how the shot is looking. Because of course, by default, I have the normal logarithmic view of my images. So I want to see by just increasing the value of the default values of my shots, how it's looking in general. And the first thing I see in this particular shot is that the look of my shots is a bit in the warm side, and I don't want that look for this project. Let's say that we have full freedom to select the look that we want for this project. Normally, the client the ones that define with you, the colorist, the look of the project. But let's say that in this particular case, we can do whatever we want. And just because I'm going to explore the look, I don't need to follow a specific rule, like for example, starting with primaries, then go to the secondaries, then apply the qualifier for the skin. I don't need to follow a specific workflow for my color, because what I want again is to find the look that I want to use in the whole project. So once I just increase the saturation and change a little bit the contrast, I see again that my the overall look of my shots is more in the warm side area of the color. And just because it's a sports commercial, what I want is just the opposite. I want to give some kind of epic feeling, that kind of cinematic look that you have in the blockbusters movies in Hollywood. So I want that kind of approach as well for this commercial. So I want to move the whole look of my shots to the cold areas, to the cold side of colors, right? So once I know how the shot is moving, and I can just go to another shot and do the same thing, and we can see that all of them goes into the warm area. I know that the first step is exactly to move to the colder part of the range. All right. Now to get the epic feeling that we want, or the cinematic look that we want, contrast is crucial, and probably is even more important than color. And here I use a tip that is really useful for many creative areas. I consider myself more a content creator more than just a colorist. So I bring some tips from other areas to the grading part itself. And one of those tips is, when you need to work with the light in a way that that is really important for the shot, in this particular case, is the contrast. I sometimes remove the color so I can focus more on the light. And this is going to be like my first step. So for example, in this particular shot, I'm going to create 3 layers, all right? So vector 1, vector 2, and vector 3. In the vector 3, what I'm going to do is to remove colors. And I do that because I can focus on the light by removing the colors. So this is going to be just a temporary setting, and it can be really useful in complex situations when the color can be a bit distracted and you need to adjust the light of your shot. Then I will decrease the saturation. Again, it's not a very conventional approach, but it can work in some situations, all right? And in the first vector, which normally would be like the primaries control in every shot, I'm going to use blending mode, because my image is not very contrast. The signal is very compressed. I need to contrast it. And I can use the leave, gamma, gain controls like we normally do. But the great thing of using a blending mode as a first step is that automatically will contrast my image in a very nice way without making too much adjustments. And for contrast, the most traditional controls, or the most useful controls, are the overlay, the soft light, and the hard light. Okay, so we have them in there. Hard light is, as the name said, is a bit strong. So I'm going to select the soft light, and automatically I get a basic contrast for my shot. Now, the reason why working in black and white can be useful as well is because, as I said, I want to move the shot to the colder part of the range, not very saturated. So automatically the black and white is giving me a feeling that is closer to what I want. Again, I want to find a epic feeling for this shot. If everything looks very warm and very saturated, it will remove that feeling. So automatically, the moment that I move the shot to black and white, I'm just creating a feeling that is closer to what I want. So now I'm going to control the light from the vector 2. And the vector 2 is going to be just for the light. The great thing is, because the vector 3 is making the saturation to 0, I can use not only the lift and the traditional leave, gamma, gain to control here the contrast, to something like that. I can even use the trackballs. And with the trackballs, I can change the density of the light and the density of the black and white mapping to my shot. Now, the problem is, the moment that I just remove this saturation, because the vector 3 is going to be my color layer, the moment that I recover the saturation to 100, I'm getting this, of course, because in the vector 2, I'm just changing the trackball to red in this particular case. Okay, so to avoid that, to keep the overall looking of my shot, instead of working at RGB in the vector 2, I'm going to work only in Luma. And working only in Luma will remove that kind of problem. So now we are keeping the overall look of my shot, the original one, but I'm just controlling the light from here using the trackball as well. So I'm using not only the traditional rings for controlling light, I'm using as well the color information, the trackable information for that to control the density of the light in my shot. Okay, so I'm going to recover again my desaturation layer, and I'm going to change the contrast to get the feeling that I want. I want a very contrast image in here. I don't care too much about those shadows that goes beyond the 0 level, or those highlights that go above the 1000 level, the 100 in this case, because I have it in percentage. I don't care too much because I can always recover them later. In Mistika, you never destroy the signal, so you can just work and just contrast the image in the way that you want, and then recover the signal that is beyond or below those limits, right? So once I have it here, I'm going to move to bands, and I'm going to use in the same vector, I'm going to combine primary and bands. That's a great thing in Mistika, the fact that you can combine tools together. All of them works in parallel, so it's not that first I'm doing primary, then I'm doing bands. All of the tools works in parallel, and because I'm just controlling the light, I can combine them because this layer is only for lighting, right? So I'm going to go to the bands. And in here, I'm going to use one of the new functionalities of Mistika 10.1. One of them is we have here now in bands a new panel of ranges. We have the same panel here in primaries, in which we can select the video credit and HDR, and we have include shadows, midtones, and highlights. So automatically, it maps the pivots to the areas that you want. So for example, in bands, I'm going to select the shadows areas, and as you can see, the pivots automatically are moving to the shadow part. So now with that, I can just control those shadows and black hues that I have in here and recover them back to have legal values for my shot. All those problems are already here. So we can just increase the black and the shadows just to recover those details. And you can see I'm just recovering that without affecting the rest of my signal, which is pretty great. And it's very accessible. Just open the range and you will have the shadows panel, the shadows option over there, all right? Okay, so I'm going to move this down a little bit and recover a lot of, well, the shadows. Never mind, if I still have some values there, I can again recover them later. That is not a big deal. Right, so once I have the contrast, and this looks, if we compare the result, we see that we are creating a nice contrast there. Now the feeling of the shot is changing quite a lot. It's the moment to move to the color part. And we have quite a lot of tools for focused on the color. We can even just control the chroma in an independent way in here, but in this particular case, I'm going to work in RGB, in normal RGB, all right? The first thing is just to disable the saturation. So now I recover the original looking. As you can see, in the vector 2, we have changed quite a lot of things in bands and primary, but the color hasn't been affected. I was just working with light. So now here in the vector 3, what I'm going to do is to change the overall looking of my shot by moving the color to the cold area, to the blues, more than greens, yellows, how it looks, which is how it looks now. All right. We have several ways to do this. Maybe the easiest way to do it is using the temperature control, because with temperature I can just move directly to blue or to more yellowish, etc. But the problem in here is I don't want to change the saturation of my shot right now. What I want to change is the hue of my shot. So primary is not the best system for that, because every time that I change something here, I will affect saturation. What I want is to affect the hue, the overall hue of my shot. Another way to do it in primary, in case that you want to alter saturation as well, is using the contrast. But again, is not an option here because I'm changing saturation. So what I'm going to do is to go to bands, and in bands, because bands works in hue, saturation, and luma in an independent way, I can control the color without affecting the overall saturation of my shot. So from here, I'm going to change my highlights, and I'm going to move them more to the blue area. Same thing with the shadows, like that, and maybe as well with the midtones and the highlights. I can use this as well to increase a little bit the specular lights of the highlights. I can use the vector 2 as well, just if I want to keep everything organized, and in the vector 2 only the light, and the vector 3 the color. Okay, so now we have this kind of cold looking shot that looks like more dramatic, like more cinematic than the original look. That it was this one, so we are getting this result. Now, if we apply this to a similar shot, like for example the shot 9, we will see that it applies really well, and it keeps really well this consistency. I can use this this shot in here and create a little bit of more contrast if I want. Oh, sorry, I have the contrast enabled. So contrast here and maybe there. And then I can then apply small details to each shot. So for example, in this particular case, I want to focus the attention here in the hands because I think it's where the movement is. So I'm going to add some shadows here in this area. So we can create another layer, create a shape. There you go. With Alt, I can increase the outside. I'm going to control, I can control the inside. So I'm going to do it that way. And I will apply in the outside mode. So outside the shape, I will apply shadows control there. So just to remove some details in this area and put the focus on the viewer on the hands in here. So now if we deselect it, create another layer just to remove the vector lines of the shape, we can see how we have shadowed this area and now the attention is in the hands. So basically we're getting that feeling. If this, for example, looks very magenta, which it looks more magenta than in this particular case, we can just come to here to the vector 3, which is our color our color layer, and just try to move it to more bluish and greenish just to make it look more similar to this one and to create that kind of dramatic effect or cinematic effect on the shot. Now the great thing is we're basically making all the look with only 3 layers. At the end, you will be able to put all those adjustments in almost 1 layer. You don't need to do it in that way. But when you are playing with the shot, just to find the look that you want, that's what I said at the beginning. It's really interesting the fact that you can combine the tools in the way that you want, and you have the freedom, the full flexibility and full freedom to combine those tools in as many layers as you want. The first thing you need to do is always to find the look that you want, and then you try to optimize it and make it more efficient and use less layers, especially for managing later those gradings between shots. Because if you have less layers, it's much easier to copy, paste, select the things that you want to bring between shots, etc. If you have many layers, it can be a bit problematic, or you need at least to be much more organized than if you have only 3 layers. All right, but for now and for this presentation, we're more focused on the look of our shots. Okay, so let's jump to another shot in here. We're going to use a similar approach. In this particular case, I'm not going to use the saturation to 0, just to show how can we manage that in other way. What I'm going to do is, again, applying the soft light to apply a quick contrast. As you can see, this is like a nice starting point for all my shots. I'm going to create another layer. And in here, what I'm going to do is, again, work in the luminance of my shot, but just working with the primaries. So there you go. Let's increase in there, maybe something like that. Then jump to bands, control maybe the shadows. Again, I want a really contrast image here, okay, to get something like that. Okay, and now once I have it, I'm going to create another layer, and this time it's going to be the color as well. Instead of using the trackball in here, I'm going to use the curves, because it's another nice way to control the color and even the light of your shot. I'm going to increase the size of my panel by open them in a floating window. Let me resize it. Okay, and I'm going to disable the gang RGB because I want to control every curve by separated. So I'm going to maybe decrease a little bit the red. There you go. You can go to the blue ones and maybe move it to something like that. Okay, and use some kind of S-curve here. Maybe I need to recover some colors later with saturation, but that's fine. Okay, and then we can just go back to primary here and just increase a little bit the saturation to have more details there. All right, so once I have this situation, I'm going to copy that color in here by just double clicking. There you go. You can see all those details, all those micro contrasts. It's much easier to see them in closer shots than in this one. That is very general, but is what I want. You see all those details, all those highlights that I have in here. Of course, the shadows here are beyond that level, so I'm going to control the light in there by moving the bands and the shadow up, and maybe increase a little bit the highlights. But again, I want to keep that very contrast. All right, so now, for example, in this particular case, you can just go to lift swell and upload There you go. And I can control for the light, as I said at the beginning, the curves as well. So for example, in here, I have some values that are below the 0 level. So I'm going to bring the luminance curve in here. And I can, because I can just make zoom in, what I'm going to do is to focus, especially in those areas in the shadows. I'm going to create like 3 points in this area and just try to bring them back. As you can see, I can bring back those shadows to my image. There you go. So now we are creating this nice looking. So as you can see, trying to find the look of your shot is something that is something that you don't need to follow specific rules. You can combine the tools in the way that you want. I'm just using one vector for light, one vector for color, one other vector for the blending mode. Probably later, when I need to manage that in between shots, probably I will try to merge maybe color and light in one vector, so it's easier to manage that, and then focus on small details, like for example, applying shapes. In this particular case, I can, for example, create some shape because the light is coming from here. Okay. So I'm going to increase here. Oh, no, not in the vector 3, sorry. I'm going to create another vector just to apply that shape. So there we go. And I will apply some light that is coming here from the corner. And again, as you can see, for light, I always normally use the bands because I don't want to change the saturation of my color normally when I apply light. So for that kind of fine adjustments, I use bands for like general or the general, yeah, the general approach for the shot. I normally use primary, but when primary is set in the values that I want, I then use bands to control the light. So I'm going to select here this, and then maybe in the outside, I will add some shadows, maybe there, just to add a little bit of contrast between this part where the light is coming from there and this part that is closer to the camera, right? So, but I always add those details later. The first thing is to build the overall look of my shot, and I can always then bring, if I bring, for example, to this shot, I can just bring those details and see if it works in similar shots, okay, like this one. As you can see, automatically, I'm just creating that kind of look between similar shots. So this is like the way that I work. I normally find a look for one shot, then replicate that look between similar shots, see if it works. If it doesn't work, I come back to my master shot, that the one that I'm using for creating the look of my shots or the look of my project, change it again and copy again to the other shots just to see if it works better. But normally I work one with more detail and then copy paste and see what happened. So this is the general approach of finding a look in this particular case for this project using several tools in Mistika.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for this. I think it was very useful for everyone who are, just starting with Mistika Boutique and they don't know where to start with the color tools. So as we mentioned before, in the upcoming version, users will get to see some additional color functionalities that were actually developed as a result of their feedback. So why don't you show us the new channel mixer and hexagon tool that will additionally contribute to a greater color workflow productivity?
Sure. Yes, as Sarah said, with Mistika 10, when we released the new interface and with the new tools, etc., we released a version expecting to get feedback from the customers and improve those tools with their feedback. And that's what we have done for Mistika 10.1. We have included many of the feedback from our customers in this new version. We're going to see the mixer. Let me show as well another minimal detail, but it is useful, especially for current users of Mistika or from current users for Mistika Boutique and Mistika Ultima, which is the fact that now from here in the settings, you can switch between the RGB values in here or the color box in there. So for example, if I change something, I will have the color information there. So this is really helpful for just watch in just one view by, for example, reviewing your vectors, what change you have done in the trackballs in this particular layer. Okay, but the main new adjustment, or the main new tool in the new in the color interface in Mistika 10.1 is the new hexagon and channels mixer. Let me go to another shot like this one, because it's much easier to see it in here. So I go to the fixed vector, and now we have two more panels here, the hexagon and the channels mixer. Let me first contrast the image and try to find the look that I had in the previous shots, and then I will use those tools to manipulate the color in a really nice way. So the first thing, again, I'm going to apply a soft light color control. There you go. This contrasts the image in a nice way. Then move to the vector 2, change luminance for this shot. Let me zoom out so I can see my whole range. There you go, to find something like that. Gamma. I'm going to use the trackball as well to see how the density responds. Soft clip. Okay, then go to bands. Again, I'm just controlling lights in here. I will change the color now in the third vector. Okay. Okay, so let's say that we have this situation, and I want to change the color of the grass in here, especially let's move forward. I want to even increase the contrast between these particles here from the sand and the grass. And for that, instead of using the trackball or the curves that I used in previous shots, I'm going to use the fixed vectors. In Mistika, there's always several ways to achieve a similar result. That's another approach for this kind of workflow. And instead of using the normal fixed vector, which if you are a current user of Mistika, I'm quite sure that you love this tool. What I'm going to use is the hexagon or the channels mixer. The three of them are connected. So let me create another layer. Go to the hexagon, and now we have here an hexagon for hue saturation, and this is for luminance. So basically this controls hue saturation at the same time, and we have then the luminance values in here. It's basically like controlling these two first sections of the fixed vectors in just one control, and leaving the luminance in an independent control. Then later you have the RGB mixer, but let's focus first in the hexagon panel. Right. So what I want to do is, for example, to move this green grass to a more bluish look into to increase the contrast between the grass and the particles, the yellow particles here. So what I'm going to do is to take this green value and just move it close to the cyan. And I'm going to make the same thing with the yellowish. So automatically, as you can see, I'm changing that color without affecting anything else. The transition is really, really soft. It's really nice. It works with the same color science of the fixed vectors, and for that reason, it's very, very clean. It doesn't include any new noise or any artifacts or anything. Basically, it just changes the color in a really nice way. Same thing I'm going to do with the t-shirt here by moving the red to maybe some more magenta, and maybe put it like that. I can saturate it by increasing the value or desaturate it, depending of what I want to create, right? So in that case, I can control in a very interactive way the color of my shot. It's another way to do it. Again, I use first bands by controlling the hue of my color. I use the curves in the previous shot. Now I'm using the fixed vector for that, which is really nice. It is a really nice tool for building the look of your shot in a really quick way, because by just manipulating the primary and the secondary colors, you get an immediate look for your shot. It can be used for small details, specific details. For example, if you need to make a qualifier and then change the color of that selected area, or just for changing the overall looking. If your client is with you and is requesting any change in colors, this is the right tool to use it, because by just controlling those points, you will make a very interesting change to the shot. Then later from here, we can just, for example, control the luminance, the overall luminance of the hue by, for example, decreasing here the luminance of the yellow and green, and to add more contrast with the particles here, which I think is the more interesting part of the shot, right? Now I can use as well, instead of using this this approach, I can use as well the RGB channel mixer. All right, so I'm going to mute this one, and I'm going to create another one, because as you can see, those has been manipulated, because again, the three panels here are connected. The three works in the same way. They use the same math. So I'm going to create another vector. And in this vector, instead of using the hexagon, I'm going to use the RGB mixer. Now, the great thing of the RGB mixer of Mistika is that it's not only RGB. We can call it RGB CMY, because we have as well cyan, magenta, and yellow. We follow the same philosophy that we built in the primary with the printer steps. We are not only restricted to the traditional RGB, we keep as well the control, a specific control from cyan, magenta, and yellow. And same thing here, right? So for example, in this particular case, as we saw in the previous example with the hexagon, the grass in here is a mix between green and yellow colors. So I can, for example, decrease the value of the green one here, move maybe a little bit to the blue one area. Same thing with the yellow by decreasing it. There you go. Okay, so try to find a different color. Same thing, for example, with the red color, we can just move it to something more saturated or less saturated, or we can just even change it to blue and make a total conversion. Of course, this is affecting the skin because the skin has red colors, but you can change the colors in the way that you want, mix them, make the red look blue, make the blue look red, combine the channels in the way that you want. This is a more technical tool. It's probably not the kind of tool that you use for building your overall looking for your shots, but for specific needs, like for example, if you have a sky that is really blue and you need to decrease that level of blue, it can be really useful for those small adjustments. For the rest of the adjustments, I normally recommend to use the hexagon here. First, because it's more interactive, it's more visual, is more clean in the way that you're basically selecting range of colors in here. The channel mixer can be a bit limited to the channel that you want to change, not combining like I'm doing here. I'm combining here green and yellow, and I'm controlling all those channels at the same time, all those colors at the same time. If you are managing them individually, it's more open to get problems or between the transition of the colors. So this is more for a specific technical needs, and this one is more for overall creativity needs. But we combine both of them. The channel mixer has been a feature request about for one of our customers. Well, in fact, for many of them, but for in Mistika 10 was one of them was insisting quite a lot of including that tool in here, because we always listen to customers for deliver and to creating the new tools. We including it here in a nice way, so you don't need to navigate to this vector to this parameters tree to control those effects. All the settings are available from here. So again, it's not about building one tool that can do everything. It's building quite a lot of tools in a way that you can combine them freely and in a very creative way to find the look that you want. That's the reason why in this presentation I haven't started with the primary, then jumped to the secondary, and I use the tip of the saturation to 0, etc. Because when you need to find the look of your shots, Mistika offers this kind of freedom. You can just combine the tools in the way that you want, play with them, mix them, and find the final look that you want for your project. And then from there, you can start and work and copy, paste, managing that color, following the indications of the client, etc. But at least you have that original flexibility that only Mistika can give you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Adrian, and that's great. I think that, you know, the overall control that the users have over the color with so many different tools is amazing. So if we head to another very popular topic when speaking about color grading is obviously versioning. So let's see some useful tools that can help us achieve some more efficiency.
All right, so when we talk about versioning and managing grades, this is like the technical part. As I said at the beginning, we have been focused more on the creative part, and now is the technical part, how to manage those grading between shots. This is more focused on those that are new to Mistika, but I think it's always interesting to see how can we bring color between them, between shots, and how to manage them. So for example, if we jump to this particular shot, and I'm going to use, even if they don't look the same and they don't have like similar points. It's a different shot, but maybe I can use the same tools that I used in this one here. And just to check, I can just keep it pressed and just preview the look. Maybe it doesn't look right, but I know for sure that the problem here is light. So, and because I have a layer, a specific layer for the light, I'm going to make double click and then apply. Another way would be like keep it pressed and then drag up, and then I apply the color, okay? So from here, I can just jump to the color, to the light bar of my vector and then control it from here. Again, what I want is some kind of cold feeling for my shot there, okay? Then I'm going to move in the vector 3 to something more yellowish, to something more bluish, sorry. Okay, I can then add, create multiple versions and create one version. I'm going to use the hexagon again in here. Oh, sorry, there you go. Hexagon there to control, for example, the red colors in here. So I'm going to fix vector, hexagon, and maybe move them to something more saturated or something more, yeah, something like that. Yellowish. You see the background? I can control like the color of the background and move it to something more reddish and get now another look. I'm gonna create another version. Oops, let me create it from here. Right. It's not creating version, one sec. Create, oh, there we go. Create history. Now I'm going to create another layer here and I'm going to add basically like light coming from the top. Right, something like that. Into blur, just in case. And then go to bands and add some light that is coming from here. Let me move this down and this one as well. And I'm going to create a third version in here. Right, so now I have 3 versions. I can navigate through here between all of them, 1, 2, and 3, and see how they react. Now, the great thing is once I'm making this kind of adjustment, so for example, let's say that I'm going to apply some of the colors, some of the corrections that I've done in some shots. So for example, this one, I'm going to apply it here as well, because I think it's part of the same shot, all right? So I'm going to select in there and then move here and apply it. Just to make it things easier, I'm going to add more lines so I can just move faster and disable my vector scope. There we go. And now by just making here double click, I bring the color. Again, because I have the light control, I can just go to here and just remove a little bit of the gain and then control the light of that specific shot. So once I'm making all those changes, I'm making all those versions, maybe I need to copy this to a different version of my project, like a small version of my project. And I have this small shortcut or this small version of this commercial. All I have to do always is just copy everything, select it, and match and paste. And in here, I can always match by source path, by real name, by timecode range, whatever I want. I'm going to select the 3 of them. So in that case, I can be sure. We have here the real name max in case that not all the characters match. So you can select how many characters you want for matching the name and what you want to do with effects. If you want to replace them with the past with the original effects, or if you want to put them on top in case that you have made some kind of basic adjustments to your new version, replace or do not replace and just keep it in them, on what to do with the animation, if you want to ignore the keyframes or keep the original keyframes or scale to the new animation. I always recommend to keep original keyframes because normally you are selecting the animation and the keyframes based on the movement of the shot. So it makes more sense just to keep original keyframes. Then you click in paste and there you go. Now all my adjustments have been applied. And the great thing is if we, for example, let me copy this and you will see what happened as well. If I bring a shot and I copy again, there you go. When I go to this shot that had 3 versions, it keeps the versions as well that you have done in your master project. So basically you can make versions per effect in your master project, then bring all those versions to your secondary cuts for the same project, and keep those versions in case that you need to go back to the first one or to the second one and make any adjustments. All those changes, all those adjustments can be done automatically here in the time space. So you use only one canvas to manage all the versions and all the cuts for the same project, which at the end is much more efficient than using different save files or using several projects for managing one specific commercial like this one or one specific project, which is really nice. So this is a quick overview how to bring and manage versions. Regarding only about color, we're not talking about versions about color management, etc. We will see that in a future presentation. But this is regarding with color. We can create versions per shot or versions per project in a really simple way.